Well, hi. I know I've been gone for like half a year and suddenly I released two games in basically 1 week. So what the hell was I doing? Well, clearly I was working on making games, but in the previous video I talked about making two games at once. But in the end I ended up working on three games at once. Rose, which is my personal long-term project, then Blightfog, which was a school project basically for my university, and then Caretaker, which was a collaboration with another school. These two last games have been released for free on itch and you can play them, and this video will be mostly about Blightfog because I basically stopped the production on Rose for a couple of months, so there are no updates, and Caretaker is actually quite a small game and I don't think it would be too interesting to talk about it, especially since I was making just the art for that game, so you can just look at pretty pictures and that's basically my contribution to the project. Anyway, how is my plan of making multiple games at once going? Well, actually I have not encountered any signs of burnout or issues with hating the projects I'm working on, so for me this is a huge positive. Unfortunately, I found that for me two projects are the absolute maximum. Working on three games at once was impossible for me to handle in my head, so that's why I basically stopped working on Rose for a couple of months, and at least I'm more excited about working on that game again, and I will be coming back to the project with new perspective. Don't worry, I will finish that game and I want to release it maybe fall this year, but I'm not promising anything. With all that said, I would like to talk to you about Blightfog. For those who haven't seen my previous video, Blightfog is basically a short, narrative-driven RPG about a dying world, and you are basically playing as this anthropomorphic character who has to take care of a child and travel across this world on your bike to find the child's mother and save her. There will be more at stake in the end, but I'm not going to spoil that. You will have to play the game for yourself. It's completely free and I might keep working on it a bit in the future. There are still some things missing, like the animations, which are only in the first two locations, but once again, I'm not promising anything. I know that I'm horrible at working on projects after they release, so this is just a big maybe. Obviously, the greatest inspiration for this game was Disco Elysium. I am obsessed with that game, and I have been for years. I still keep hearing the narrator's voice in my head sometimes, and for a long time I really wanted to try to make a game like that, so a game that focuses heavily on the narrative aspect and has branching story structure, which I would like to talk about a bit right now, how I approached writing this game. I am not a writer at all. I've had some classes about writing games or writing for games, and I've done a lot of research, watched a lot of talks by different screenwriters for television and games, mainly a lot of GDC talks by Chris Avallone, who is my favorite writer in the gaming industry, and I tried my best. I attempted to put a lot of my personal experience into this game, and basically the way I wrote dialogues was that I was running around my room and acting out the scenes and talking like the characters, which I had to do at night because I really didn't want anyone to see this because it was horribly embarrassing and weird. But in the end it proved to be quite effective way for me to write. The quality, I will let you judge that, how it turned out. I think I did my best, and yeah, it is what it is. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, let's move on to something that I understand a little better, which is the design behind writing these dialogues and the choices I made. Like I said, this game was heavily inspired by Disco Elysium, and I basically stole their approach to writing dialogues. I mean, the UI is quite similar because I find the vertical dialogue box much more comfortable to read, rather than the horizontal box at the bottom of your screen, which is being used in visual novels. I tried to limit the maximum amount of characters in one text box displayed for the player to like 150 characters, which was what Disco Elysium does. Sometimes I break this rule because I just couldn't be bothered to split the text. That's the truth. Anyway, the way I wrote the whole thing, since it's a branching narrative, I quickly came to realize that it would be impossible for me to manage like a huge open world and hundreds of different choices and stuff. So I focused on the little decisions. Once again, this is what the Disco Elysium did. And these things really like influence what the other characters will tell you, and the small things mattered to me much more than the overarching narrative structure, which will be mostly the same. But there are 4 different endings, and based on the little choices, you might unlock different paths to these endings, or at least influence how different characters will view you and interact with you. Speaking of characters and the overall art, this whole world was inspired by the art of, now I'm sorry if I'm gonna mispronounce these names, Simon Stalenhag and Sujian. Sorry, I have no idea how to pronounce these names. Yeah, Simon is the author of the Tales from the Loop and the Electric State, and I love these visuals of those giant machines combined with nature and people, and I thought that it would be an interesting contrast to put actual like animal characters there in contrast to this technology and machines, because the narrative touches on the collapse of ecosystem and the exploitation of nature and stuff like that, so it felt right to me to make the characters not necessarily human but animal plus humans, and I think Sujian's art is exactly what I was going for, so I tried to do something similar in this game. I struggled a bit with the art style because at first I overdid it with the post-processing, and then I had to like strip down different layers of post-processing to make it more readable and clear. At first it was more like in the shades of grey, and then I decided to just go full black and white. In some locations, which are the interiors, there are other colors. Initially I started making this game in Ink, which is basically a language for writing narrative games, and I wanted to integrate it into Unreal Engine. I was unhappy with writing in this style. I prefer node-based systems and dialogue trees, and so I ended up using the dialogue plugin for Unreal Engine, which at first I was really happy with, but I don't think I would use it again for another project. Simply because it was difficult to export the text itself from the engine. Like for example, I could do with the ink, I could export it as JSON or something like that and give it to someone else to review the text. This was impossible with this plugin, or I didn't find a solution. So if I wanted to give this to someone who, for example, knows how to write things, I would have to give them either the game and they would have to play the whole thing and check different options and the branching paths, or I would have to give them the whole Unreal Engine project and they would have to go through the files themselves and check the dialogue trees inside the engine, which no one is going to do. So if I decide to make another game like this, I will probably just make my own dialogue system. But otherwise I'm really happy with like the dialogue trees that this plugin creates, and the option to have different conditions influence the dialogues, and there is a lot of good stuff about this plugin. Just working with it is sometimes kinda painful. Another huge pain point was the inventory system, which I wrote myself and is completely my fault that it was horrible. I, for some reason, made like 3 different versions of this system and all 3 are in the game. One is for like all kinds of different inventories in the world, like boxes, barrels and stuff like that. Then there's an inventory for the bike, which like saves all your items you are carrying with you. And then also there's the player inventory, and you can put only some different types of items into each slot. And this one had to communicate with the dialogue system, or this one and the motorbike as well. So the dialogue system knows what you are carrying, and the dialogue can change based on what you have in your hands and if you are wearing clothes and what you have in the bike, and it can give you different options. Also, this all has to be saved, so it has to communicate with the save system, which I'm also using a plugin for. And like 90% of all bugs in this game was just the inventory refusing to either save something or talk to the dialogue system or something like that. And I can't even explain to you how it works because it's such a horrible mess. You don't even want to see the spaghetti blueprints behind this. It somehow works right now, and I'm not touching that thing again, ever. Okay, ranting over. Well, not quite. This was also the first project where I tried using Fmod for the whole sound design. Luckily, I am not the one who is making the sounds for this game. That's being done by a friend, Nicola, and I still had to do the integration into the engine. Working with Fmod is a strange experience, at least for me, because I like Fmod, I like working in it, and it's giving me more options than the normal Unreal Engine sound system. Not talking about the meta sound, I'm afraid of touching that. It really looks complicated and I need to do more research on that in the future. But the integration into the engine is not ideal for me because I work with blueprints and there just aren't enough nodes from the Fmod plugin which I can work with, and it limits what I can do. Also, it does things like suddenly deciding to delete like half of the blueprints or different like files in the project, and I don't know why it does that. I like refresh the Fmod banks and suddenly there is a prompt window telling me, oh, do you want to delete half of your project? And I'm like, no, why would I do that? Why Fmod? Why are you like this? So yeah, it's a little bit iffy to work with, but so far I think I will use it in a future projects as well. And yeah, I think I've been rambling on here for way too long, so I would like to invite you to play this game. Go play Caretaker as well. It's a short game for like 7 minutes. Play Blightfog if you want to read stuff. Also, it's not nearly as long as like Disco or something. It's hour and a half. Maybe 2 hours if you like really explore everything, and it's completely free. Let me know what you think about these games. I'm gonna go work on Rose or something else for some time now, and I will hopefully see you sooner than in 6 months or something like that. Yeah, that's it. Bye.